and welcome to a very special Sunday edition of Outside the Box TV. It is November 20th, 2016, and on this Sunday, while so many Americans and people around the world are going to church, I think that it's important that I set aside an hour where I don't cover the news, but I cover my spiritual perspectives from a non-religious understanding, a Gnostic perspective, a modern Gnostic perspective, but I also feel like even giving it a label is bringing it limitation. So in the tradition of Outside the Box, I am going to be commenting on some of the things that are taking place and also sharing a few words from the Nag Hammadi, sharing a few words from the Gnostic Gospels, sharing a few words from Ansari's selected poems, sharing a few words from Psychic Self-Defense and Well-Being, and sharing a few words from the Matrix and philosophy. So it's going to be an exciting show. And I feel like there is just far too much disinformation in not only the mainstream New Age community, but the mainstream alternative media as well. And there's a reason why I created hashtag free media, which you are free to use as a content creator or someone that posts around the internet. Because if we don't have spiritual freedom to talk about the things that are really going on within this matrix, how are we free? How are we going to end up free, by the way, looking at it from a political perspective? Even if Donald Trump is an angel, why would you give someone so much power? Someone else could come along who's not an angel and misuse that power. We need to reclaim our sovereignty. But to reclaim it in the physical realm, we have to reclaim it in the spiritual realm. I think what a lot of us have seen in the alternative media, that by not being spiritually grounded or on the path, whatever that means is really a subject of interpretation. But I think it's something for each of us to look in the mirror and contemplate. We're either getting healthier ultimately, or we're getting sicker. You may go through a period where you're eating better, where you're going to the gym, where you're not smoking cigarettes, you're not going to the bar as much. Then there's other periods where sometimes we're just not as sharp as we'd like to be. Sometimes there are factors for this. Oftentimes humans are not aware of some of the subtle causal factors that can lead them to become out of balance. And simple activities, simple actions, ways of focusing our attention, particular ways, can bring us back to a state of clarity and consciousness. We think about those virtues within, inner wisdom, inner knowledge, inner light, inner understanding, inner healing, and the list goes on. Those powers and attributes. We ask ourselves, what would a master do? In many cases. And we understand that when we ask a question, the answer may not immediately come. It's not about immediately receiving an answer. It's the actual act, the journey. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Now, before we go any further, I want to let you know that there is finally, for the first time in my career in the independent media, my lifetime in the free media, for the first time I have created another way for you to contribute to this program. I haven't talked about donations for some time. Donations have been fairly light, which is fine. I also want to give thanks and give back, which is why I'm producing so many videos to those that have donated over the past. But I've actually created a goal for myself, and you can read about it down below at the link. So there's another way to donate, and you can donate on a regular basis per month. And that website is patreon.com. The link is down below. It's an alternative to PayPal. And again, I thank you. And I also thank all of you who are watching, who are getting something from this, that are not able to contribute. I thank you for watching as well. My interest, apparently, is very different, in my opinion, than other prominent voices in what is called the alternative media. I want to see souls set free from this matrix, and I'm concerned that certain ways of thinking, certain angry thoughts and directing our emotions and fears in certain directions, and trying to tell others how things should be and control others. And worst of all, trying to create fear of others. Ooh. It's like entrapment. I want you to think about all the entrapment stories you've ever heard about the FBI. You sure? Come on, man. Come on down. We'll show you how to blow up a backpack. We'll show you how to pull off a jihad. We know you're angry. There's a guy named Muhammad, Somalian immigrant, lived in Hillsboro or Aloha, Oregon. FBI found him on the internet, targeted him to be mentally ill. The reason they were able to get Portland back in the JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, is they entrapped this mentally ill Somalian immigrant Muslim, went out, entrapped him, taught him how to blow up a backpack, then directed him towards this. And they intervened and went, oh, we saved you from this guy that in reality they set up to begin with. They actually funded things that were required in the whole operation. What you're dealing with right now are many human beings, whether they know it or not, even whether Trump knows what he is really in or not. There are human beings out there that are serving the dark agenda, that are serving the agenda of the dark grid, that are rewarded in the material plane. So keep your understanding of karma and how people are punished or rewarded within this lifetime in check, because it's more than one lifetime. Someone can literally end up serving the agenda for a lifetime, the agenda of the dark grid for a lifetime, and they can be very well rewarded for their services. You can see others in the meantime bombed, destroyed, murdered, raped. And you're like, wow, it must be their karma. Was it really? Every time? Are we sure? Then, of course, don't forget others. There are other anomalies, other wild cards in the Matrix that challenge the narrative. Oh, if you're allowed to talk about some of this stuff, you must be part of the system. You must be an agent of either Israel, the Vatican, or something to that effect. And the reality is, there are quite a few souls in some way, shape, or form that are meant to be here, not by accident, but are meant to be here for a reason. They aren't accidents. They shouldn't have been an abortion. Okay, even though we have supposedly an overpopulation problem, there is no accident. Everybody that is here on the planet right now is meant to be here. The question is why? Is there a collective role? Is there an individual role? Let's talk about it. We always do. Why are we here? What is the meaning of our lives here? What is the meaning of the understanding of becoming aware of the grand conspiracy, especially when it's all been put out in plain sight? There's something very spiritual about that, and I believe that, and I can feel that inside of me. There's a reason why they put it in plain sight. We are always reminded in some way, shape, or form, as they deceive and as they send people in these wicked directions, they remind people through pop culture that they have free will in some way, shape, or form. In some way, shape, or form. Yes, there's a history of persecution. Bad things seemingly happen to very good spiritual people. At the same time, there are many that have come before us that have proven that the pen is mightier than the sword, who seemingly had one purpose and one person only in their incarnation, in their existence here on this earth, and that is to awaken the minds of others and not be distracted and thrown off that path, misdirected from the path of awakening others. We have certain gifts and talents, perception. We have a gift of communication. Is this gift of communication to be used in a mindful, positive way to communicate truths? Or do we use this gift of communication to spew lies and disinformation and demonize certain groups? What kind of behavior do you see from people in the mainstream media and alternative media right now? You tell me. As a spiritual being inside a human body, we have these natural psychic abilities that are not admitted and recognized by the institutions of our world, but are experienced by the bulk of the human species. You turn around because you feel eyes on you, you're feeling that awareness that is non-local. And there's been so many times in Portland, Oregon, where, I've just glanced at someone, and I've seen people just straight up be like, who's that? Yeah, who's that? Who that? Those were the powerful sensations of light hitting you. The glare of Alex Ansary, the glance. Alex Ansary, like Cyclone from X-Clop, without his sunglasses. I've often thought that I should wear sunglasses more because our eyes do emit a frequency. And so I've seen the effect of looking at people randomly in today's day and age that are not, that are not in any way so tapped out of their psychic potential that they're not realizing it. They are realizing it. They're responding to it. And sometimes they respond to it with a sense of anxiety, like, what is that? Or I see how some people have responded to the energy. When I walk into the room, when I walk into certain bars, I've seen people turn around because of something shifting in that place from my very existence. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a powerful thing. It's not always something that I can control. So there is a reason why I've chosen to go in a direction of living closer alongside nature with trees around me. And I have invested a lot of thought, personal energy, money. And I still will be invested in this property for the next few years because it became very clear to me that living in an urban environment was toxic for me, and that I was receiving a lot of energetic backlash because of the things that I discuss. And because of the role that I'm playing on this planet as part of a ground crew, if you will. We'll talk about how that differentiates from some of the mainstream New Age belief systems, but a part of a real life ground crew, soul group family. Sometimes I think of it as the guardians of the earth. Many of us cast down into the earth, whether we chose to come down or we were cast down, whether it be voluntary, involuntary, or perhaps something even beyond that perception, and a little bit of both, something that would play a part in our evolution to go to the next level up. And as one talk show host said many years ago, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. And I would say be bold and speak the truth and yield the sword of truth, like that divine feminine spirit, one of the last Lord of the Rings, the female standing up and slaying that demonic, archonic being, Sauron, or the Demiurge in the Nag Hammadi. And so I believe that what is happening here with this use of technology that some of us are involved in this modern Gnostic movement, we're a part of that ground crew. And as agents of that soul group family, if you will, we are doing this to evolve our own soul. Whether our existence here is a punishment or a choice, we are doing what we're doing here on the earth as a part of something that is related to our evolution. I will tell you now, and I'll elaborate in a future video, I think we have a few years left before some of these physical world events start moving into action. All I've seen is confirmation after confirmation that we're right on track. What does that mean? They're turning up this machine in which they're working to entrap as many souls as possible, and turning them towards dark emotions and wicked deeds that can bring back this karmic response within this lifetime, and to use them as tools. Because in many cases, it's not about this alien invasion in the way that a lot of people think. It is the mind virus within the collective human consciousness consensus of reality, within our structures, within our authority structures throughout the planet. And so there's a consciousness to that, and human beings ultimately are used, whether they know they're used by these entities that are operating in the shadows, whether they know they're tools or not, doesn't really matter. You have the majority of the population acting on some sort of autopilot. And these wars, ultimately, which a lot of people don't understand, that are very adamant about there not being any conspiracy whatsoever or New World Order. And it is very difficult to explain to them that on a larger perspective, the pain and suffering that is created from these wars and these invasions and these 9/11s. And you think about what's really going on in the households of the people that live in the Middle East, that are literally surrounded by all this. You know, and they go from one society to another to where, oh yeah, you know, someone's daughter's down there starring in one of the latest pornography movies because Baghdad's free now. Yeah, the women have been liberated. Now it's time to take off the hijab and get screwed. I see what people identify to be progress in this society, and my jaw drops. I see confirmation of more of this cellular sexuality, the male-female divide, and kind of like this that kind of kicked off, kind of like a collective like jab, if you will, at the collective body of mankind. So we see this manufactured divide of the sexes. And so we've gone from the predictions in a linear Western state of consciousness, not Eastern, not a yin-yang understanding, but a linear, we're going to have a collective shift in consciousness by a certain point in time. I've seen it how it's co-opted our awareness and attention. It's co-opted the spiritual community. This is a time of great change. This is a time where we should herald in the individual shift in consciousness and seek self-mastery to open up the heart, okay, to magnify the power within our vessels, to be of sound mind, body, and spirit, and to work with others to bring positive things into being, or to start slicing away and dismantling the architecture of the dark grid. See, all these things and more, I believe we have the power to do. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about harnessing the power of the sun, not just for solar panels, which is harnessing the power of the light right there, and 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 the camera right there, and the computer right there, and the backup bank right there. It's an amazing time to use technology in a mindful way, as I am with you right now. I never had a place like this in Portland, Oregon, where I rented apartments that I have no ownership of. I mean, my heart feels strong being here in between all these trees, you know, and not being afraid to go to the next step and take the extra time here. You know what, to at least give you my honest perspective on the spiritual way out of this matrix. And so I want to talk about these timelines. I have been talking about this in recent videos. There are people that are still telling others, people like Alfred Weber of Exopolitics. So this particular individual by the name of Alfred Weber of Exopolitics is having a discussion with someone else, and he's saying the same thing he was saying a few years ago, that a portal's opening in the year 2025, and the Earth is going to ascend. So he's literally recycling the things that were said in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, things that did not come true. You see the talking points of Alfred Weber, how it's really like a spin-off, and it's sometimes mirroring the Galactic Federation of Life. And of course there are others that say that they're channeling or tapped into certain messages coming from the archangels, and you're dealing with this constant theme of beings outside of ourselves fixing our problems down here on Earth. Now there's no doubt in my mind that we have angels. I can talk for a period in time about how I've seen intervention in my own life, and angels coming in human form. There's a difference between that and some of the ways that people understand it to be. A lot of these human beings that are on the spiritual path by the millions end up trapped in situations where they start meditating and opening up their mind. We'll talk about meditation shortly. And they start believing the first things that come to them. And they feel an actual interaction, communication with other beings. And because of the whole anomaly of that, like, oh my God, wow. And perhaps there could be some information that's given to them that is showing them or indicating to them that this is a being of knowledge and information, psychic abilities. And so many human beings, I believe, throughout time have been deceived by entities that have appeared to be gods, that have shown themselves to be telepathic, to have above human abilities, psychic abilities, healing abilities, the list goes on. And so in this physical world, the world of the demiurge, which the Nag Hammadi talks about, maybe we'll read a few words from the Nag Hammadi and then go from there. In this physical world, things can be manipulated. And so, as I've said before, somebody could be serving the world of the archons, and they could be rewarded greatly. The cost is their soul. There could be someone else who is literally working throughout an entire lifetime to expose the workings of the archons, or the dark side, or the system. They don't have to verbalize it. They don't even have to be on camera. It could be a part of who they are, and other entities or beings that can see them and identify them. And in some cases, the human could be a very powerful human that is destined to be here at this particular part in time. Maybe a part of one of those higher consciousness, true light, archetypal soul group splinters that is literally in human form, that is performing the great work. And so they may begin to attack those individuals. And today, right now, in a day and age where a lot of people are activating in the individual shift in consciousness, they have found themselves under attack since these portals have become more active. And it's not just CERN. We see people that have told others, put your consciousness towards these opening of the portals and the thinning of the veils in the fourth dimension. And some of the stuff's naturally occurring with the solar cycles and the sun connecting to the earth. Portals between the sun and the earth. And holes in our Earth's magnetic field opening and closing. And NASA and the European Space Agency putting satellites out into space, and every now and then they get blasted, and they don't necessarily want to talk about all that. But they're trying to understand things that they don't understand, and they know quite a bit about the sun. Oh, trust me, NASA and NOAA know more about what the sun does to affect human consciousness than which is admitted. But I'll tell you that ghost hunters that do this on a professional basis, that go out and record with special equipment. I've seen some posts on the internet about the connection that's been made between the geomagnetic storms caused by the solar flares hitting the Earth's magnetic field, and more of that recording showing up on those particular tapes. And so in periods where we have these disruptions of our Earth's magnetic field, and other things, by the way, can cause the geomagnetic storms. You also want to look at the body, the human body, and the human aura. And see the as above, so below, as below, so above connection. As we have fields around us, the planet has a field around it. When the Earth's field gets thin, things happen, and things that the Earth's magnetic field normally protects us from, asteroids, space junk, other things, I'll even say other forms of intelligence. Maybe that field is meant to keep out certain threats, along with what I perceive to be the potential guardians of Earth that are there operating from a distance. This archetypal energy that I think a lot of us connect with, and I really identified it in a recent meditation. And that played a part in me deciding I'm just going to come out and start discussing the potential human experience, soul connection to the guardians of the earth, and answering a call in which many are called. Many are called on this planet to do this great work. And few answer the call. And I would even say that this great work may be going on or may be necessary for multiple lifetimes if a great error in judgment was committed by a human soul. Think about it. Who knows how long you've been here? It's more than likely that the more empathetic you are or understanding of some of the concepts and teachings that I have, the longer you've been around the block. It's also more than likely that a lot of the people that we come in contact with won't wake up and can't be helped because it is their first time on the block. And it isn't meant to be judgmental. Who knows what kind of things we've been through before we got to the point where we can comprehend such concepts that we can comprehend now. But there seems to be some sort of requirement at the soul level to even be able to interpret certain concepts, such as thou shalt not just, bomb country, back to Stone Age. So I would say to you, and then we'll read some passages. I don't see what they call it, the creator of the cosmos, or Jesus returning with a flaming sword, an intervention that's going to remove the karmic consequences that this country as a collective energetic construct, as do the incarnations within the planet. There's a reason why you're even incarnated into certain places during certain times. What's done is done. And like 9/11, in a way, I believe already being predestined and understood by the Creator, and before any of us even came out of the womb and came here, it was set up long ago for it to be allowed and for it to happen on the timeline. And for there to be a test after 9/11 to see the reaction, with it also being in plain sight, that was the manufacturing. The manufacturing of terror, a manufactured event, a manufactured police state, and for it to be obvious the entire time. To see which humans would actually override the programming and actually start walking in the light, and also for them to see which humans are actually going to be stuck in this matrix, responding to the programming, responding to the hateful messages and propaganda, and repeating the talking points. We're really seeing it right now, more so than we saw after 9/11. Hatred. Judgment. Ban them all. Hurt them all. Build the wall. Kill them all. Drone them all. It's not an accident. The machine that we are in, and I speak of a machine in terms of etheric machine, this matrix in which the Creator has allowed, in which we are in for a reason, in which we remain for a reason in some cases, if we do not evolve beyond the energy frequency construct of this matrix that keeps attracting us here as we sometimes try to get out. And it is some sort of a purgatory dimension as far as I'm concerned, but not one without miracles. Certainly a hell domain in a certain way, but not always that way, but it can seem that way. Many people find themselves in a state of pain, especially during certain periods in which their emotional body is more activated. Sometimes all it needs is some full moon energy, some alignments, planetary influences, other influences, and some solar-induced geomagnetic storms. And people are really feeling that they don't want to be on this planet anymore. And I would say that that sense is really stemming from a desire to go home to wherever our home truly is. Because this isn't really it. This isn't really the true reality. This world really is an illusion, a holographic reality, but it has purpose and meaning. It is not pure chaos, like boom, big bang, random, not so random. And we're not so much victims. There seems to be something to all this. And so in this massive soul prison, you have new souls, you have old souls, you have people that have brought in energies from other planets and other galaxies and other time and places, and you have periods where the veils are thinning, and certain people seem to be tapped into a certain frequency because they're not independent or insusceptible to spiritually induced mind control, because it's not all physical. They're not insusceptible. And so a lot of them, just like the Matrix, they're literally plugged into something that they don't understand. And so if someone does not use discernment, They could be under the control of some of these entities without even knowing it. And they can be in a state of pleasure, physical pleasure, engaged in certain activities and lifestyles, maybe hurting others, maybe being engaged in propaganda. They could find themselves rewarded in the material plane. And they can be easily bought off internally. You know, for years, people debated about whether Alex Jones was sold out to the FBI. And even though, to a certain degree, it seems that he is, I would say, and I perceived, the concept really isn't physical in every case, just like gang stalking is really, I think, a symptom of something that is happening in the spiritual astral plane, spiritual assault, spiritual attack, psychic attack. And so Alex Jones, for example, sold out to his own greed and his own inner demons, in a way. And that is another way someone can be compromised. You talk about the idea of selling your soul, and it's not necessarily like something you sit down and you like literally do with an actual devil, where you cut yourself here like the mafia, maybe draw your name, sign your name in blood. I feel that what I want to say is when you sin against God's creation, when you engage in propaganda that leads to, the destruction of certain lands or certain people, when you use your brawn, brain, and intelligence to serve the dark side in some way, shape, or form, or just simply worship yourself or convince others to join the cult of you or them or whatever, something about these actions that leads to the soul being bound to this world. So, this is not a reality that I feel that we are in per se, where it's about everybody waking up and getting to this certain place of awareness and consciousness. Certain things are going to play themselves out on the timeline, like 9/11 and events here in the United States. What happens to us on an individual level, that is all in relation to our actions and our intentions. And we have to see between and separate, in some cases, the difference between our experience and what's going to be the experience of somebody else. Now let's read just a passage from the Nag Hammadi. The hypostasis of the archons is it is the original description of the archons. On the account of the reality of the authorities, by the Spirit of the Father of Truth, the great apostle, referring to the authorities of darkness, told us that our contest is not against flesh and blood, rather the authorities of this universe and the spirits of wickedness. I have sent you this because you inquire about the realities of the archons. Their chief is blind because of his power and his ignorance. And his ignorance, he said, with his power, it is I who am God, there is none apart from me. And where have we heard this from in the past and from others? You shall worship no other than I. And I heard recently a pastor leading his flock astray. And while his name's not important, what he did is. He's got a podcast on YouTube where he's talking with somebody else, fallenangels.tv, I believe Mr. Garcia, Zen Garcia, about the archons. And his way of describing the archons was the inner marrying within the United States, which is a issue that the neo-Nazis and the KKK also happen to have with the United States, the problem that they have, others have, that are pushing this white genocide meme. And it's rather unfortunate to see someone stand behind the Old Testament God that murdered and told the people to murder and kill this particular group because he had a flawed genetic group of animals and humans running around, a genetic experiment gone wrong, it's time to kill. And then explained, oh, no, that was necessary because that was that fallen angel seed that mated with the And then he makes that connection with the intermarrying of today's day and age. So, the principalities of darkness that we are against, that is not flesh and blood, but is really the spirits of wickedness, the spirit of evil. Spirit of evil and the spirit of deception operates through these people that act like they are blind, that they cannot see, how they are perverting scripture and promoting hatred and doing it all under the guise of awakening people. So when you're dealing with the Nag Hammadi, for example, and you're dealing with Gnostics or Christians or some people that talk about the archons, understand there are some people that are gone, that are actually sinning against God's creation in a great way by deceiving people and misusing the scripture and using it to promote a racist agenda and not identifying how they are on board the white supremacy program. And they themselves are more concerned with the flesh than spirit. Why so concerned with someone's race? And so also we look at, and I've referenced, the Great White Brotherhood that's been referenced by the Galactic Federation of Light and the Ashtar Command and the mainstream New Age community, and the lack of outrage concerning the violence taking place today in the third world. And I stand before you today in this sermon to say that I believe that no man or woman that has no feelings for these people that have been removed from this planet, I don't believe that they will be removed from a chaotic situation. I don't believe that they're going to ascend out of the physical earth. I don't believe that the physical earth is literally going to raise up and ascend. I believe that those people that are actually silent concerning these things will remain in that kind of a world where those kind of things go on. And that this world seems to be destined for this artificial construct, one world government, after the staged managed Third World War. Behind the scenes, many archonic and other spiritual parasitic beings, for example, working on behalf of these archons, siphoning the negative human emotions created through the war situation and the things that people do to each other during a collapse. And this I have warned as well. I have warned people in Portland about this as well. I believe some people have been deceived into going in certain urban areas. And so when you deal with the entrapment of souls, when you deal with the spirits of wickedness using the internet to pollute people's minds, I see an attempt to sabotage those souls. So they end up in situations to where they could end up drawing negative circumstances, people, places, and things to them, to where life happens and oftentimes hits us all, like a ton of bricks. And sometimes we don't know why things happen. And sometimes things happen and it seems really horrible, but we really walked away unscathed. But what were we meant to learn from the lesson? One time in 2007, I walked by a group of 5 young African-American teens. He blew his cigarette in my face. I said, "Don't blow smoke in my face." And he got me. And then he kicked me immediately and caught me right in the solar flex. And then I've got 5 guys surrounding me. I did avoid a beatdown, and I have had a number of situations happen in my life where I believe there's been divine intervention, whether it be a violent circumstance or just where certain threats were kept away, or where there was an intervention in some other circumstance. And so while it caught me off guard, and there was a little bit of embarrassment through the whole thing of being so easily caught, throughout most of my life I've also gone through a lot of periods where there's just been a lot of protection. But again, why do certain things happen? And why do certain things not happen to certain people that are obviously serving the dark side, if you will? And again, we clear our mind. We look for the answers with many things. Why do things happen for a reason in our lives? Why did certain things happen for a specific reason? Why are we here right now? Why are we in certain specific genetic body types? Why are we male? Why are we female? Why do we have the parents that we had? Why do we go through certain things in our lives? And meditation is good. Grounding yourself, being in a higher state of consciousness. There's that part of us that knows when someone's looking at us. Like I said, we want to cultivate that awareness, and we want to use this awareness for the higher good. So again, I advocate a deeper investigation as to what's taking place on the planet and how we live in a world now where we have abundance to so much technology that's also used to lead people astray. But any one of us has the ability to impact the hive mind by writing an article, making a video. It could go viral. And in this digital age, in this sword of truth, reality, there's a reason why they want to distort the truth. It's because the truth has power. We can speak truth to power. And so we have the power to affect this matrix by introducing information into this reality that shines the light on the nature of our enslavement. And the Nag Hammadi was discovered in 400 AD. This year is 2016. And all the way back as far as 2012, I perceive the particular period that we were in as a period in which there would be more widespread knowledge and information as to how we protect ourselves, how we protect our psyches from infiltration, and that it would be more received. I believe that this dialogue is more received by many of you, because we're in a day and age where more of you have seen the shifting of personalities. We've now seen a huge chunk of the human population, folks, act like they're under a spell with this Trump deception. We know politics are rigged, right? We know this. And they know this because they talked about it a few years ago. So we ask ourselves, what kind of spell are some of these people under? But it's not just about the Trump thing. I apologize to those of you that are Trump supporters that are also on the spiritual path. Hello to all three of you. No, but seriously. How do we make sense out of all these insane cult-like ways of thinking? And also look at that which is called the radical left and the massive uprising. Now we see it, this misunderstanding. We have all this solar energy and a full moon, and we have riots and protests, and it all goes quiet. It all gets very, very, very quiet. Did you notice that? For those of you that have stuck around long enough, that have heard me talk about our spirit's connection to the sun, how it boosts all these things. And so it brings out that which is. And sometimes there's a positive manifestation, sometimes a not so positive manifestation. It's also in the eye of the beholder, whether it's positive or negative. Obviously, there's going to be different perspectives on protests in general and Trump in general. So we see this rise. And we see mindful, expressions of the rise and the moving forward. And I'm creating more content. Now I'm here and we're moving forward with this cycle. And then we also see the more chaotic expression of it. But if we understand the process that we're going through in these cyclical events, where sometimes we see people that seem like they're under a spell or that they're possessed, also acts of violence, face-eating related stories, and periods and phases to where you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Talk about a beast running around the planet for a few weeks. I think we've seen things like that in the news. And whether we're looking at the face-eating stories in which the so-called bath salt attacker actually wasn't on bath salts and literally just snapped, or we're looking at Slender Man, or we're looking at the movements of the creepy clown, they're all tapped into that And then we saw the spat of the alleged hate crimes by the Trump supporters. The women and the hijabs being confronted. There were waves of that, and it may still be going on, but it's gotten quiet. I think those men, those groups of men, granted these stories were true and actually happened. Talk about women, being choked with their own hijab. I will be back. This is the reality of doing media off the grid. And let there be light. Like I said, I have everything that I need and not everything that I want. And I understand that. Boy, do I understand that. Okay, it looks like we have just a little bit more time for our broadcast today. In this weekly sermon, a spiritual perspective on what's going on in our matrix. Okay, so several books here. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a regular thing for me to have several books on the table and to grab a book in the tradition of divination and to randomly read a chapter or a portion of a chapter. And I've had the synchronicities before, and we've all had them perhaps, where you think about someone and they call, or you maybe you're reading a book and you come across a word while you're listening to a podcast or the radio, and that word will be mentioned. In some cases, it'll be happening a lot. So there's not just the 1111 or the 333. There's also other synchronicities to where things that you're focused on, things that you're thinking about, things of that nature. It's like, the Matrix with the cat going twice. You see that type of manifestation in another part of the real world, following the thought or preceding the thought or something to that effect. So that's essentially the thinking behind reading random things to go into different topics. So from the book on psychic protection, your prime need in psychic self-defense is a well-fortified aura. In this chapter, therefore, we must consider what the aura is and then how it is to be strengthened. Some confusion has arisen in the past and is continued by various writers as to whether, in referring to the aura as a fine material manifestation, is meant or a dense astral one. Each is possible, for there are two main divisions for the aura. Associated with the astral body is the aura, an emanation of energy from the total personality which is radiated from the astral body. It is technically referred to as the beta force field, its physical counterpart being the electrical aura or alpha force field, which is radiated by the physical organism. Many phenomena commonly held to be of psychic origin are in fact produced by the electrical aura. In this series, the term aura is used to designate the beta force field. When the psyche is infused with energy of a high spiritual vibration, the aura gives its esoteric title. And there's another word for aura, which is difficult to enunciate, so we'll keep moving forward. But it's the protective barrier, which effectively excludes all external astral forces of a lower vibration than its own. And we are going to talk about meditation shortly. We'll come back down to the conversation of psychic protection, grounding the aura, and in fact grounding all 7 levels of the aura. So for beginners, you can learn more on the internet about grounding and different techniques, but to visualize a grounding cord connecting to your root chakra, to the center of the earth, in which you ground out pain, in which you ground out foreign energy. And there are some techniques that I shared previously. I'll go over them again in brief. But these techniques were taught to me by a friend several years ago. I may have to go out and start the generator one more time. And so it's been a number of years since I've come across these techniques, and like anything else, you're either getting healthier or getting sicker. So it's not just the physical realm, it's also the spiritual. And so I consider activities like, protecting your shield and grounding to be that of spiritual maintenance and hygiene. And that should not be neglected. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, in today's fast-paced, technologically addicted day and age, I think that there's a lot of people running around without a lot of healthy spiritual hygiene going on in their personal lives, regardless of their physical health, appearance, or attractability. And so these are things to keep in mind. I'm going to go forward just a little bit. In real life, however, the power of a spiritually developed psychic aura can extend far beyond a person's physical presence. This is not a matter of speculation nor of hearsay. It is a matter of experience among people who take their inner life seriously, which happens to match something that I told you already about the experience of walking into a bar or a certain business or place and seeing my impact upon that reality. And even if it's a positive thing, and there's information in my auric field, which is coming from an astral or spiritual place, if I'm in an area that's very lower dense, or a city where that is not the dominant vibration, there's going to be certain energetic backlashes. So it's also important for people to understand as they go through this awakening period that we're in, that we are affecting our reality around us, whether we know it or not. Yeah, we create our reality to a certain point. There are also certain things that I believe are predestined by the Creator as tests to see how we react. But we are capable of impacting our reality. We're also capable of working together in a unit, in a collective hive mind unit, and applying our intention to affect our reality in a specific way for the better, and it's very, very possible. I also want to say that it's important to remember that throughout time, mystics, poets, seers, prophets, if you will, were judged and stoned, if you will, physically, and in some ways, psychologically, socially, for thinking outside the box and being true to who they are. And things have remained until this day. And so I think it's important for people to understand that the majority are going to remain in a certain consensus reality. There are different souls with different levels of experience that we are sharing space with here. And so not everybody is going to awaken, even if we do everything in our power to show them the way, at least some basic, very easy how-to, 1, 2, 3, how to pick the locks on your handcuffs, spiritually speaking, how to unbind yourself to this matrix. But some people, perhaps like us, are going to have to come to their own awareness on their own time. So from the selected books on Abdul Ansari, the poet of the 11th century, I often read this poem. From the unmanifest I came and pitched my tent in the forest of material existence. I passed through mineral and vegetable kingdoms. Then my mind carried me into the animal kingdom. Then my mind carried me, or rather, having reached him, I crossed beyond it. Then in the crystal clear shell of the human heart, I nursed the drop of self into a pearl. And in association with good men, I wandered round the prayer house. And having crossed beyond, I took the road that leads to God. And I became a slave at God's gate. Then the duality disappeared, and I became absorbed in the one. And so, we see the tradition of conversations with God continuing to this day, alive in the 11th century. We see parallels between the sayings and teachings of Jesus and that of the Buddha. So we see aspects of this matrix bringing this knowledge back to the people in different lands and different times, and somehow or another is recorded in one way or another. There's no stopping this information. And I strongly feel that these solar cycles, it's like there's something about the energy of the sun transporting ideas towards us. And I suspect in some cases, souls themselves, or the sun at least being a conduit for transport, for the transport of souls in and out of this reality, as opposed to these black holes, as opposed to these Archon trapdoors. There are some that talk about, those beings that come and say, come into the light, come into the light. And there are some that speculate that's one of the ways that keep people in this incarnation time wheel. Of course, I think it's got to be more involved than whether or not you get caught up in one of those particular come over here cases. If you literally are at a vibratory level that's beyond this planet and beyond the consensus reality, it's very possible that alone will be the thing that's necessary to pass through the gatekeepers of this matrix. But I want to ask, and I want you to really think, especially for those of you that have been invested in the idea of the external saviorship theology, of the collective shift in consciousness, do you really think some of the souls that are on this planet are ready to go to planet B? Have they shown themselves to be a society that would prevent genocide, that would prevent certain things from taking place? Don't you really think, doesn't it make more sense to look at the earth as the place where we work out some of that stuff and we learn about causal factors? Don't you think that it's kind of going a little bit far to be jumping off to other planets, or to be saved by aliens, or to be demanding free energy technology when we really actually have more technology than we need, and it's long past surpassed our humanity? How about being a little bit more mindful with the technology that we have? It's just a question. And so the matrix in philosophy, we're going to go to a random part. This was not pre-selected. And we want to go somewhere to where it's going to be simple to understand from the beginning. Christian themes in the Matrix. It was no accident that the Matrix was released on an Easter weekend. There are numerous Christian motifs in the film, some obvious and others quite subtle. And when you hear about Christianity in the Matrix, think about Gnosticism or Gnosis. It's a Christian Gnosis understanding, really, or interpretation. They may use, and it looks like they are, it looks like they're quoting Luke here. In the Gospels, Jesus is the promised Messiah, the one who is to come. In the film, Neo is the one, the messianic deliverer, whose coming was foretold by the oracle. Neo means one. Moreover, the Greek neo means new, signifying the new life in which the risen Neo enters, which presumably he will make possible for others. Well, we are the ones we've been waiting for, which at some point was going to come up in this discussion. We are the ones we've been waiting for, and others paved the way for us to get to where we are now, with the books and knowledge and DVDs and information, and we are here to help the next generation come up. And as I said for years, even before I knew what the term Gnostic was, speaking this truth, there's a karmic connection between the past generations and the future generations and ourselves that are seemingly caught up in the middle. But as some speculate about timelines and existing in multiple lifetimes at once, perhaps we can engage in positive or mindful activity here that can bring healing to other aspects of our being. But there certainly isn't an accident that we're here to begin with. Both first and last names have clear Christian overtones. Like doubting Thomas, the disciple who expresses skepticism about accounts that Jesus has risen from the dead, Neo is plagued by inhibiting doubts about the unreality of the Matrix, his abilities, and his identity as the One. And I think on an individual level, we've gone through that. That's why so many people, even though they may not go, I'm the One, they feel what the character Neo feels in the Matrix. That's why it touched so many people on such a deep, profound level. And so, this is discussing knowing who you are, knowing what your role is, knowing why you're here, knowing you have power, knowing you can positively impact this matrix that has been so infected by beings that are actually less powerful than us. And we see the Agent Smith Archon in the Matrix, the movie. We see what that represents. But we also see, like with reality, that Agent Smith is not all-powerful. And once Neo learned, once he began to believe in himself, once he began to believe, as Morpheus says, he's believing now. He began to break the codes of the Matrix. And he began to dodge the bullets that the Archons were throwing at him. To the point where, once he was done with one Archon, the other split. And this is the way things really work. And we really do have the ability, just like the church has its exorcists, we really do have the ability to shine light in a world of darkness. And some could even say that is our destiny. For now, I'm Alex Ansary, signing off from my off-grid studio. And again, if you want to support my work, visit alexansary.tv. There's a whole new way to donate over at Patreon. The link is down below. And I thank you for watching.